There is one massive cheat code that has the power to generate success in almost any area of life, but most entrepreneurs never fully activate it. And I would say this one thing is the most fundamental and powerful virtue and value that contributes to holistic human success, not just for entrepreneurs, but for humans in general. But it eludes most people, especially entrepreneurs, and I think I know why. So let's dive into it. I wouldn't call it my number one favorite, and maybe it isn't even in my top 5, but there was a movie that I watched when I was a kid that really inspired me a lot. It was The Black Stallion. It's a movie about a boy named Alec who gets shipwrecked with a wild Arabian stallion on a desert island, and they forge this deep bond until they end up being rescued and reunited with Alec's parents. And later on in the movie, they meet a retired horse jockey named Henry who helps train that powerful stallion to compete against the world's best racehorses. And eventually, it all culminates in the race of the century, where the Black Stallion's wild spirit, along with Alec's devotion, leads them to victory. I, of course, loved Alec's character in the movie, but the character that I wanted to be more like was the Black Stallion. And I think young boys, just like entrepreneurs, they like the idea of being the wild stallion, powerful, mighty, unhindered, free. It's why we do the crazy entrepreneur things that we do. We take these insane personal risks and we volunteer for uncertainty and instability because we have this vision that's bigger than short-term security. We're looking for freedom, true, unhindered, wild, asymmetric success. Now, if you're anything like me, then you don't want to settle for mediocre. You don't want to settle for average or status quo in any area of your life. I want to build crazy successful businesses. I want to have an exemplary marriage. I want to be the father that my kids deserve, the very best father possible. I want to be physically fit, emotionally fit, spiritually deep, mentally sharp. And I've realized that there's a lesson that the Black Stallion teaches us about how to live that kind of life. And the core lesson might not be what you think. It's actually a lesson in, now wait for it, humility. Now, humility is the single most impactful superpower that you can have. I've maybe never confessed this, especially on this show, but for years, I gave myself to serving someone else's vision rather than my own. It was in the mission space after I had exited my first business. Now, I learned a lot. I did a lot of cool things over nearly a decade, but the further things went along, the more I wrestled with the fact that the things in my heart, the vision I desired to see come to fruition was not being served by me. And the reason I did it for so long was because I thought I was walking in humility, when in reality, I was defining humility in the wrong way. I always just assumed humility was the voluntary embodiment of weakness. But then I did a word study and I discovered that my definition of humility was wrong. Humility is most accurately defined as strength under restraint. So that strength can be ultimately used for the benefit of others and not just myself. People like my wife, my kids, my family, my friends, and anyone with whom I have any measure of influence. And I was actually preparing a talk on this topic for a creative entrepreneurs conference a couple years ago that I was the keynote speaker for. And I ended up, when I was preparing my talk, I coined this simple aphorism or kind of modern proverb of sorts. A lamb need not be humble in the presence of a lion. It must only hide. The burden of humility rests solely on the lion because he is the one who has the options. You see, the lion could eat the lamb, or let it live. Of course, nobody would expect the lion to pass on a meal, but it would be contrary to the laws of nature. But the point here is still solid. You cannot restrain strength unless you have it. You cannot have humility until you admit to, recognize, and own your strength, your capacity, your verifiable God-given badassery, your wild stallion nature. And just like the Black Stallion couldn't win the race of the century until all of that wild, raw power and instinct was bridled and channeled in a focused direction, You too won't see the heights of success and freedom in any area of life until you embrace humility in its truest definition. Limitless strength, limitless power and instinct, under restraint, and for the benefit of more than just you, the benefit of others. But humility can't be seen simply as a virtue, or it remains ethereal and it has no real staying power in your life. So how do you activate, take action on, and truly embody humility in such a way that it vaults you into the stratosphere of impact, freedom, and legacy? Well, the way that I see it, there are three primary steps that you cannot avoid or sidestep on the journey to embracing humility. Number one is become bridled, but not broken. There's a thin line between bridling yourself and breaking yourself. You want to bring restraint and focus to your strength and instinct without denying that you can still walk into a room full of insecurity and chaos and problems and bring the stability, bring the solution, and bring the outcomes that are needed. That is the mark of a great entrepreneur. It's that when others panic, when others have problems they can't seem to solve, you show up and suddenly the atmosphere changes. You can, through sheer entrepreneurial will and grit and creativity, solve the problem and bring the alignment that is needed. Bridling your focus and your strength allows you to limit what problems you are willing to use that strength to solve. But breaking yourself means limiting your engagement so much that you begin to lose your instinct. Bridling is delegating lower tasks so that your strength goes to higher value work. Now, arrogance would refuse to do that from a belief that, well, nobody can do it better than me. But if you go too far and you break yourself, you'll let high value failures in your team slide and your business will end up suffering. So an example in your business might be that you were doing all of the high ticket client sales meetings, and then you hire a sales guy to take those meetings so that you can focus on higher level strategy. But if that sales guy's underperforming, then you have to know when to take some of those meetings back and even bring him with you and tell him to not say a word, just observe. If you go past the point of bridled into the place of broken, then you'll lose that instinct and ultimately settle for subpar performance. And now your business took steps backward instead of forward. Humility knows when to give away responsibility and when to take it back. So be bridled, but not broken. Number two is self-agency. The beginning of humility, just like the beginning of success, is full self-agency and self-ownership. We live in an entitled world where most people want to point the finger at some external factor, some other person, some broken system, some external uncontrollable issue, and use the excuses that their back was against the wall, they weren't set up for success, or XYZ other excuse. But who exists that doesn't have their back against the wall in some way? Now, I'm not saying that external factors aren't real, but they are external, outside of your control, and most often outside of your ability to even influence. And the most successful people in all areas of life, family, business, health, etc., are the people that scan their life, look at all the areas of their life where they're not where they want to be, and respond with this simple statement: it's my fault. Self-agency. I am the one who is ultimately responsible, and if I'm not where I want to be, then it's because of me. Humility and success start with and are sustained by self-agency. It's my fault. And number three, self-control. The ability to delay gratification and deny yourself some current pleasures in order to become the best version of yourself is critical. And it's a building block of active humility. If you close a big deal and then you go out and blow that money on a new Lambo, then you already have received your reward. But if you choose to make better choices, that momentary success can multiply over and over again. And too many entrepreneurs choose to eat the seed. because they aren't keeping their eyes on the orchard that could be if they planted it instead. If they invested it back into more growth, or if they invested it into some income producing hard assets that bear fruit monthly or quarterly and appreciate in value. The truth is that delaying gratification, saying no to impulse decisions, is critical to obtaining the freedom that you set out to obtain. And this doesn't just apply to money. It's saying no to the donut so that your body doesn't get filled with inflammation and visceral fat and you're a brain-fogged sluggard who can't show up for his kids and then you end up dying early. It's saying no to that drink because quality sleep and a sharp mind are more important to you than a couple of hours of taking the edge off because your day was stressful. Delay gratification. Practice self-control. Know that you are the only thing that you always have control over, and align your decisions with that perspective. You see, most people never get where they want to be, not because of a lack of opportunity, but because of a lack of humility. They aren't willing to look beyond themselves. They define humility in the wrong way, and it loses its desirability. Humility is strength under restraint, and it starts with recognizing that you have limitless power and strength to live the exemplary life and build the exemplary business that you want to build. But you have to bridle that strength so that it moves in the right direction, without breaking that strength by giving too much away too quickly, or by refusing to take responsibility back from your team when they miss the standard that you alone have the authority to set and enforce. You won't get there if you blame externals for where you're at right now. So practice saying it's my fault in response to every area that you aren't hitting the mark. And then be willing to delay gratification and exercise self-control so that you don't end up eating the seed that could become the orchard. And these principles apply to your family, your health, your relationships, and of course, your business. So go out there and own it. See you next time.